So Majors is out in the MCU. Jonathan Majors, as you guys already know, earlier today was found guilty of 2 charges and subsequently dropped from his role as Kang the Conqueror from the MCU. The question now is, what direction do they go in? I think there are 3 realistic options that they could exercise here, and I want to talk about them here in today's video. But first up, I really think that the MCU kind of already gave themselves an out with the Kang story, with what they did at the very end of Loki, right? At the very end in the finale, they essentially downplayed the Kang threat with how Mobius easily brushed off the one that was lost in the adjacent 616 realm in Quantumania. Leading up to this point, the looming threat was all these Kang variants now being loose and the dangers of a multiversal war. But now, with Loki being the god of stories and putting a wrench essentially in He Who Remains' plan, the TVA seems to have control right now over the Kang threat, where they're essentially just keeping surveillance of any pop-ups. The MCU really gave themselves 2 options here. One, which was, here are the Kangs. They were just in hiding. They're now ready to unleash their plan. The TVA wasn't surveillance strong enough, right? Or they could have went with the option of, hey, no, didn't you see that we took care of the Kang variant with Loki controlling all the timelines? They really kind of gave themselves 2 options here to work with, but ultimately built in that out that I was talking about. Now, in terms of like one of the plans that they could implement here, they could go with a recast. Now, there have been some names that have been thrown out there. You have John Boyega as one of them. You got John David Washington, I heard people talk about Chukwudi, who played the High Evolutionary. People could say that, maybe he was a variant. I heard fans mention that as well. And there have been some other actors too. People have even mentioned Denzel Washington playing like an older version of Kang the Conqueror. My thing with this is that this could be good, this could be bad, because who's going to be able to live up to Jonathan Majors? Say what you want to say about the actor, but he really embodied Kang the Conqueror, right? He played He Who Remains twice and was phenomenal twice as playing him as Kang the Conqueror. Yeah, he got stomped on by some ants in Quantumania, but he still showed potential of what Kang the Conqueror could be here in the MCU. Victor Timely, right? He did a phenomenal job with that character as well. I just think that anyone that steps into this role to try to play Kang the Conqueror is just not going to be able to live up to just a spectacular job that J. Majors did. And I think fans could ultimately be let down if you do end up recasting and they're just not that good. But I know people want to continue the story, so the thing that is an option that probably should be explored. But I will caution and say, I know for myself, if they don't live up to J. Majors and his acting, then I'm probably gonna be like, well, man, I don't know if this was a good recast that he did in the first place, right? Now, option number 2 is that they could go with Dr. Doom. Now, there were already rumors about this before that were, of course, debunked, or they said that they weren't doing it, right? He was mentioned in Loki too. Remember that time when Mobius said, hey, there was this kid that killed thousands of people. Maybe I'm underplaying it. Maybe it was more than thousands of people here. So a lot of people speculated that meant that it was Dr. Doom because it was near Latveria. So that is an option there. But there's no time to revisit this whole Dr. Doom idea right the current, right? Because Doom was a big part of the Secret Wars comics when we're going to be leading up into Secret Wars here. He was also a bigger villain than Kang. A lot of people have talked about, man, like, why didn't we go with Dr. Doom in the first place? Who is this Kang? Now people have not really resonated as well with Kang, especially after what happened in Quantumania. But listen, Dr. Doom is a bad man. Kang, I do believe, is a bad man. I think you should read some more comics here and really find out how spectacular Kang is. But Dr. Doom is a bigger villain than Kang. And in the 2015 Secret Wars comics, the multiverse faced destruction following a massive incursion, which ultimately led to the establishment of a new timeline on Dr. Doom's battle world. I can see them going in that direction here in the MCU if they choose to do that here. You would, though, in my opinion, have to go with a stronger version of Doom, like a Emperor Doom version, because if you're going to be having him as a Avengers level type threat, I think you're going to need somebody strong in order to be able to do that. And I think I heard that he's not going to be in Fantastic Four, right? So you're probably going to go to like a different timeline, although we don't necessarily know what timeline Fantastic Four is going to be in our universe. Fantastic Four is going to be in here. But one concern for me is that this will probably end up being too rushed if they decide to go with the Dr. Doom option right now. The Secret Wars is set to release on May 7th in 2027 right now. come on, you're gonna bring in Dr. Doom and rush him into that scenario? I don't know if I'm gonna be too excited about that, if you ask me. I just don't think that there's enough time for fans to really be able to connect with the character as they need to. And fans are already frustrated with the fact that they feel like these villains are so one and done and gone and it's all over. I just don't necessarily know if this is going to be the right way if they choose to go with Dr. Doom right now. Now, plan number 3 is the one I'm kind of leaning towards, and I hate it because it's not the sexiest option, but it kind of makes the most sense to me right now in my head. Ties back to the whole reboot thing right now. We know that there were rumors already about there being a reboot. I said reboot, a reboot. There was already rumors out there already about that. It's supposed to be a soft reboot. It's supposed to be what? Trimming the fat, keep what's working and remove what isn't, bring back some OG Avengers, etc. Bring in the SSU, the Sony Spider-Man universe into the MCU, right? I think kind of it's a perfect time to be able to do that, right? The main villain for your multiverse saga is now gone. You were waiting to do it once it was done. Why not just do it now? I know you don't like it, but a lot of people, including myself, would love to see this continue for sure, right? Which is why I think a lot of people initially say just recast. However, a lot of the same people saying that they want to see this thing continue are also the same people who are not exactly thrilled right now with all the MCU projects for a variety of reasons. A soft reboot right now probably takes care of a lot of the issues that you're probably upset about. Now, we do, because it's a soft reboot, you still want to be able to keep some of those stories, like mainly the Fantastic Four story. I personally would love to see what happens next with Shang-Chi. There's Young Avengers. I would still want to see what happens with Young Avengers. Obviously, X-Men, which we assume was going to be after Secret Wars. Now you can kind of maybe fast track that timeline a little bit here to kind of start working on bringing in the X-Men into the MCU. And while you can still bring back those key Avengers and move forward now here with the MCU, I think it presents a golden opportunity to also eliminate these sagas, because this whole thing of this story connects to that story and then it connects to this story has been a frustration point and a pain point, or I should say, for a lot of the fans. So now you eliminate that option, right? And you start kind of doing these individual storylines where, you can then later on, of course, have crossover events. Hey, you can have X-Men crossover with Fantastic Four. You'll have these other characters cross over these other characters, but then there's these individual storylines that now exist on their own merits, which now lead to some fun storytelling. So with your main villain being gone in the multiverse saga, it's going to be hard to recast here. Dr. Doom, I think, is going to be too rushed. A soft reboot may still be an option here, and you can still keep these other individual projects. I still would love to see Captain Sam. There's a lot of really Captain America, but who is Captain Sam? But I'd like to see these individual stories here kind of continue on, in my opinion. So personally, I think that these are the 3 realistic options that they should go with. What are your options that you would like to see them implement here into the MCU? In my personal opinion, I think the soft reboot might be the best option, the least sexiest, but it might be the one that makes the most sense to me. Let me know your thoughts here down below in the comments, guys. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And as always, guys, thanks so much for kicking it with Keepin It Comic. I've been GoofyRhexxi.